We are moving to item number 5, and we're going to be having a discussion and report on the conditions at the Gloucester Community Arts Charter School. I'm going to turn this right over to the Commissioner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have the two remaining items on the board's agenda are both related to charter schools, Gloucester Community Arts, and New Leadership Charter School. We'll take Gloucester Community Arts first. Okay. You have from me, you should have in front of you my recommendation dated May 20th to you. And my recommendation, in short, is that we continue the school under the conditions that currently exist for the school. I want to say to the board, because this school has certainly consumed a lot of our time and a lot of our attention, and the board has been absolutely deliberate and attentive to this issue. So anybody who wants to make the claim that this board reaches their judgment with minimal deliberation, I think is not aware of the kind of time and thought that the board has put into this school. In no way, shape, or form should my recommendation be interpreted as endorsing this school as an exemplar of where we'd like a school to be at this point, as suggesting that I have no concerns. I hope that my memo makes very clear that I continue to have substantial concerns about the school, the leadership, the board, its special ed program, and so forth. This school is, in some ways, I would say that if we found a charter school in this first year of operation where there were no concerns, that probably would be the exception and by far not the rule for charter school startups. Nonetheless, I am sensitive to the kinds of machinations that we've gone through with Gloucester Charter, so they're not a normal school or a typical school, a charter school in that regard. We did put conditions on them in December. They are in various stages of having met those conditions. In some cases, they've made progress, but not according to the timeline that we've set. In some cases, they've met the condition and have met it according to the timeline that we've set. In some cases, the conditions continue to need work. Certainly, the services to special ed students continues to be a work in progress. I am heartened by a couple of facts, a couple of pieces in regard to the school. One is that whatever attribution we might make, the school started with 64 students. Their initial budget was based on those 64 students, and that was a tremendous handicap. And the pre-enrollment that we've certified will almost triple the number of students that they'll be starting with next year, which in fact puts them on much sounder fiscal footing, which I'm hopeful is going to be very helpful to the school in terms of addressing the range of conditions that still need to be met and the programmatic issues that still need to be met. Fiscal viability has been all along a concern, and that pre-enrollment really goes a long way toward addressing that. I'm also hopeful that the school, through the leadership, you heard from the chair of the board this morning, takes very seriously the fact that they need to keep moving this school forward. They need to be very active in addressing the conditions that have been put on them, and that we will not rest until those conditions are met. But given all of those facts, looking at our precedent for charter schools that are early in their tenure, in their first year of development, It's been the practice of this board not to be quick to pull the trigger on a school in its first year of development, first year of implementation. And in fact, we've dealt with a number of schools that are well into their lifespan that are still struggling, and work hard to try to give them the benefit of the doubt if in fact we're seeing sufficient evidence of both recognizing the issues to be resolved, the conditions that need to be met, and to moving the school ahead. So for all of those reasons, I'm recommending that we continue the conditions that we've placed on the school, that we stay the course on the school. There's no vote needed. That's my recommendation to the board, but it doesn't require any kind of motion. It just maintains the status that the school is in at the current time. I don't know, Jeff, Barry, or Kristen, Allison, if you want to add anything.
The only comment I would add, Commissioner, is as this board knows, because it's gone through school closings and what a lengthy and difficult process it is. It's part of our charter school accountability, and we certainly want to do it when it's necessary. But would just remind the board that we have never had one of your revocation decisions overturned, either by a hearing officer or by a court, and I think a good part of that reason for that is because we are very deliberate in making those closing decisions, and we are able to document that we have given schools every opportunity to address their problems, and that certainly strengthens our case when we do need to revoke a school. So.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
There was just one other point. We do not yet have any strong or concrete data on the academic performance of this school at this point in time, and so you know, I'm anxious to see those kinds of indicators, MCAS and any other that we won't see until well into the summer or early fall.
Thank you, Commissioner and Jeff. Okay, the floor is open for discussion, questions. Michael, you want to lead us off? Great.
Well, I wasn't planning to lead off, but I'm happy to if need be. A few things. You know, first off, I'm glad to see representatives from both the public schools and from the charter school here. I think I'm appreciative of that, and I'm appreciative that both of you were able to come and share your views. You know, I'm also glad to see the increased pre-enrollment count. I think that's going to put the school on a sort of stronger fiscal footing, but I'm still concerned about some of the more or less simple things that are not being met, such as open meeting law compliance and finding members of the Board of Trustees. To me, it seems like that's hampering the relationship between the charter school and the district. And as somebody who's sort of overseeing this on the state board, I'd like to see that relationship strengthen. I think one thing that the charter school can do is really try to adhere to the letter of the law a little bit more. I know that may be distracting from the real educational priorities of posting minutes and notices, but I think that that's a good faith measure that should be taken a little bit more seriously. I, like the Commissioner, am eagerly awaiting the results of the most recent round of MCAS scores. I think that'll really shed a lot of light on how the school is functioning. And finally, what concerns me most is probably the fact that the arts integration specialist has not been reported to the department as was required. I think that for an arts focused school, we really need to have a focus on arts, and the arts integration throughout every piece of the curriculum is absolutely key to accomplishing that goal. So if there's one thing that I had to request that the charter school would do in the short term, it's find the arts integration specialist. And then I think work a little bit more diligently to follow the letter of the law so that we can have a better relationship between the charter and the public school. So none of those would be my comments. None of those I think are necessary of me supporting any sort of a measure for revocation or anything like that. So I'm comfortable with the Commissioner's recommendation to wait, and I saw this as a discussion, and that's my 2 cents.
Madam Chair, if I could just respond briefly to Mr. Tenzio's comments. Charter School Office would absolutely agree on the importance the school needs to continue to strengthen its board, and certainly the arts integration specialist is very high on our priority list as well for the new school year. But just to be fair to the school, to clarify on the open meeting law situation, although that condition remains open because we're expecting continuing compliance, the Attorney General's office has not reported to us any instances of non-compliance since the order was issued by them. So they appear to have made some improvement in that area.
Thanks, Jeff. Yes, Ruth.
Oh, Dana, do you want to go?
Go ahead.
I have a lot of really serious concerns about the state of this school. My number one, well, I don't even know where to begin, but I'm very, very dismayed by the special education finding in this school. I know the commissioner said it's a work in progress, but that's not good enough. I'm sorry. I think it's a travesty that we're talking about having to do compensatory services on special ed. I mean, I think we've, there's always the issue that we have in, and it comes up many times here when we talk about, there are children there who, months have gone by, or I guess since the beginning of the school year has gone by, and they've experienced a whole year of school without their IEP needs being met. To me, that's an outrage. So, the compensatory services, I really can't even imagine how you can make up for what they lacked. That's my number one concern, but in addition, and I'm not going to review all the issues that came up in this report, but when I read the end of the conclusion from our own charter school office, I'm just going to read the last sentence. It says, as indicated by the lack of responsiveness to the conditions and additional requests for documentation, it appears that the school is lacking effective leadership on both the administrative and board level in addressing some of the ongoing organizational and fiscal challenges that face the school. So to me, it's really, at the end of the day, it's all about effective leadership in this school. And if our departments reached a conclusion based on all of the evidence and all of the judging whether conditions have been met or not, that's your global conclusion. I'm very, very pessimistic about the ability of this school to function as a public school. And given, we're not just looking at this school in a vacuum. It's not their fault that because of the funding formula that's the way it goes. But in the end of the day, it's really harming, in many respects, the city of Gloucester. And when you balance everything that's been presented to us, and believe me, I feel the pain of the students and the parents who may be having a positive experience this year. But I am not at all satisfied that the conditions have been met adequately and that this school is viable.
Dana?
I didn't.
I'm sorry. Okay, Hernie, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, I share a lot of problems with the report that we've received. I actually think the Year 1 site visit report is excellent and really outlines all the ways that the problems that continue to exist in the school, as well as the areas where the school has not met the probationary or conditions that were put on. So I'm confused by the chairperson saying every condition's being met when I read this Year 1 site visit report from the Charter School Office, which is very different. So I would actually like to make a motion to revoke the charter for the Gloucester Community Arts Charter School.
Second.
Okay.
So can I just say a couple of things? I think this gets back to some of the original issues that we discussed when this was funded, and kind of looking back over the long pathway we've been. That when we first funded this or approved this charter school, it's the only charter school I've been part of in my 7 years on this board where we funded it, we approved it with conditions, on probationary status. I understand what the commissioner's saying about a 1-year startup or ramp-up period, but I've never been part of a charter that right off the bat. We said there's already conditions, there's already probationary issues that we're concerned about. And I read some lack of kind of paying attention to that this board actually made some decisions. When I read in this report that 2 out of the 3 board members that were interviewed said they thought that our conditions were recommendations or guidelines and not conditions to continue, I don't understand that. When I read that, you know, one of the conditions was that they report to the charter school offices within 48 hours any change in staffing, and still, May 18th, you have not received a report of those changes in staffing from the charter school office, from the charter school. I don't understand that. We approved a charter based on an arts integration model. That the commissioner was very strong about that in his initial recommendation for this charter, that he thought the arts integration component would be what made this charter school different than what a traditional Gloucester Public Charter School was. That part is now gone. Maybe it's going to come back, maybe not, we don't know. Oftentimes, charter schools will come to us when they make those changes and ask for a change in their charter, that they're no longer going to be focused on X, Y, or Z, and that now they're going to be something different. So again, would that be something they would have to come back to us and say, we're not an arts integration school now, we're actually a charter school that's just doing more traditional work with a volunteer and a half-time arts teacher. I'm very concerned as well about the special ed issues. After our presentation last night, and some of the issues were raised about charter schools' lack of ability to deal with special ed issues, I guess that just fits in that category. And the other 2 components that they said in the report, that they still have not come up with an effective way to identify the English language learners and then to create a program for English language learners, as well as not providing a school lunch program. I mean, I don't know what we're doing, and we did have a vote last time that board member Kaplan raised, that the conditions were kind of going to be an up or down. They met the conditions or they didn't. They haven't met the conditions. I mean, they're in the school's report. They haven't met the conditions. A number of these issues might not be a big deal. They don't have a person with public sector experience on their board. If you were a private school, these issues would not be a big deal. You can change your teaching pattern. You can put on your board who you want. You do what you want. This is a public school. There's got to be public accountability. Where the buck stops, and I'm having a very difficult time seeing how we're going to continue to let this school go forward with a report of the year 1 site visit that we were given from the department.
Okay. Additional comments or questions? Yes, Beverly.
I have a question. It's basically for Rhoda. Is she here? No?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Oh, okay. And the question is about revoking a charter in the first year. Have we, as a board, done that under any circumstances in the past? And if so, what were those circumstances? And then I have a second question for the commissioner as it relates to your comment of we will continue to monitor the school's progress and report back periodically. What does that mean, and what are we saying there? Is it progress over an entire next year, school year, or are we looking at this quarterly? So I just need some clarification in both areas. But the legal issue, please.
The board has never revoked a charter of a charter school in its first year of operation. The board has taken action with respect to 2 schools that were early in their second year of operation. One was Roxbury Charter High Public School. I may have mixed up some of all those words in the title, and the other was Youth Build, and that was very early on in the charter school movement. That was actually after the transition of the charter schools from the previously existing Secretariat of Education to the board.
What were the conditions for each
Both of those were schools that were in gross fiscal distress, and we had grave concerns as to whether or not those schools would even finish the year they were in, and we were extremely concerned about the effect that would have on the quality of education that those students received.
Thank you.
Yes, Secretary Revel?
I had asked.
Oh,
the
I'm sorry,
second
I'm sorry. I
question.
missed,
Second question.
I was,
The monitoring. we
how
were
that works.
Right, through the chair. So again, we will continue to do site visits. We will continue to monitor their progress against the conditions. What I would like to avoid, my recommendation to you is avoid a sort of every 3 months, there's a day of judgment about Gloucester Charter School. And so, I'm viewing this as, for now, we stay the course unless if I don't see forward progress, then I'll come back to the board with recommendations other than stay the course. I expect to see this school continue to make progress against the conditions and continue to mature as a school. But what I'm not recommending to the board at this point is that we have, that we go till December and there's a day of judgment in December, and then we go to March and there's a day of judgment in March. So I'd be happy to report back on any schedule that the board would like in terms of our monitoring of the school and the conditions. If you'd like to have that a few times during the year, I can certainly report that back.
thank you, Commissioner, I'm sorry. Yes, Secretary Revel, you had a point.
Thank you. This is a topic that we have spent a lot of time on, and I think we have deliberated, and I appreciate what the Commissioner just said about being willing to report back to the board at any time. I do note that it is the first year, and we expect certain difficulties in the first year of the operation of a school. I do note that we were given testimony, at least, that 100% of the current parents want to come back, so I find that meaningful at some level. I do share concerns. I mean, the special education concern is an important concern for me. And so my question is, I wonder if, we heard testimony this morning on another one of the conditions about the principal or the director of education. It sounded as though from the board chair somebody had been hired, and I guess that was subsequent to this report. I wonder if we have any updates relative to anything else that's happened on the school, at the school, with respect to the conditions, particularly the special education condition, and what you know about the hiring of the executive director.
Yes, the executive director, of course, is Mr. Blackman, but what was originally in plan to be the director of education has been recast as a head of school,
right.
And that's the person who has agreed to come on, but has not started yet. My understanding is she would start on July 1st, and would bring some of the administrative capacity to deal with some of the issues we've talked about here. In terms of the special education, a site visit report reflects the status at the time that we did the site visit. The school has represented to us, although we have not independently verified, that they have received consent agreements with all of the parents involved to receive the compensatory services that would be delivered over the summer. Obviously, if the school isn't in operation, they would not receive those services, but that's the current plan.
Okay. Well, Madam Chair, I'm going to support this motion, but not without a fair measure of reluctance, and I hope we're sending a clear, strong message that if we find ourselves in this kind of a circumstance after a subsequent report from the Commissioner, let's say this year, next year at this time, this isn't good enough.
You mean opposed then?
He's opposed.
Well, I mean, okay, I'm going to support the Commissioner's recommendation with respect to this.
Okay,
Sorry,
yes, Jim, sorry.
I'm just looking for a little more clarification, evidence here, where you say the school is lacking effective leadership on both the administrative and board level in addressing some of the ongoing organizational and fiscal challenges. That's quite a statement. And it's a statement that doesn't give me confidence that things are going to improve in the school. So could you be a little more specific about?
On the administrative side, it was clearly very difficult for the school to operate with basically one full-time administrator, and that was the executive director. And even in the best of circumstances, that doesn't provide a lot of capacity, given the many unique challenges the school faced this year, both on the legal front, on the facilities front, that clearly left them short of capacity, and that's of course what led this board to create the condition of requiring some additional staff that will now presumably be coming on July 1st. In terms of the board level, we were obviously concerned about the absence of permanent leadership on the board for extended period of time. You've heard today that Mr. Knowles, who's been the acting chair since Amy Ballin stepped down, has agreed to serve as the permanent chair. We still continue to believe, and Ms. Chernow certainly cited some of the concerns we had there, that the board needs strengthening in terms of both additional members who can bring skills and a better understanding on the part of the existing members of what their responsibilities are. So yes, we are concerned about that, and that's going to be something we'll continue to monitor.
Well, is that more of like an excuse that the reason for the lack of responsiveness to the conditions and for additional documentation, the reason for that is that we've had a lack of effective leadership, and as you're saying, that there's just they have to hire more people, and when they do, then they're going to be able to be more effective in responding to our conditions. Is that how
I think our assumption is that without additional resources and additional staff, there's no way the school will succeed. There's no guarantee it will succeed even with those additional resources. That's yet to be proven.
Mm-hmm. And there's just one other question. There's a statement in here that says that teachers noted that it's difficult to obtain the resources they need in order to deliver the academic program. And so we have a dual problem here.
And again, and without trying to say whose fault it was or why it happened, the school's budget this year was, if we had known going into this year that that school would have 60, 70 students, you would say that's just not a viable number for a school with this scope and grade span. Clearly, the lack of financial resources that resulted from that much smaller than expected enrollment was a huge handicap, and I'm not to say that the school wasn't responsible for some of that, but there were obviously a lot of factors that went into why they had a very low enrollment this year, and that's why it was so important to us to see some evidence that was not going to be a permanent condition, as Kristen mentioned. Of some of the other schools that we've closed early in their tenure never saw a rebound in enrollment. There was just clearly no demand for on the part of parents. We have at least some evidence at this point that there's sufficient interest on the part of parents, both new parents and returning parents, that the school has an opportunity to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any, Michael, did you have your hand up? No? Okay. I guess I'd just like to comment that, like so many of my colleagues, there are a lot of things here that are disturbing, and we'd like to have seen, I've had a little more optimism in December when the conditions were put in place and the progress the school had made by December. So there's a lot to talk about here, but I cannot support the motion, Vice Chair Chernow, for revocation. I don't believe we have the grounds for such drastic action. So with that, I think, unless I see any other comments, I think we need to take a vote on the motion that was made by Vice Chair Chernow and seconded by Board Member Kaplan. All in favor of the motion to revoke the charter, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Those against the motion, please say aye and raise your hand. In opposition, I guess. All right. And any abstentions?
One.
All right. So did we get that looked like 3-4-1 to me. Thank you. Okay, so the motion has been denied. Before we close this section, if there's any other comment, I'd welcome it at this time, or we're going to move to a discussion of the. Go ahead.
I do want to request from the commissioner that there is a calendar put forward for when we get the periodic updates about this charter school, because I feel like this is, we started out in a hole, we're still in a hole, the school's not out of the hole, I don't really feel okay about waiting till their 5-year review or until things are so bad that we're going to be on the next vote we're going to take right now about another charter school that's been in existence for 13 years and huge problems. So what do you think is an appropriate time frame that you could give us feedback? I mean, obviously MCAS results are one, but in terms of organizational viability, after October 1st, when you look at enrollment, I'm just wondering what's real.
Well, again, I'd be happy to do whatever pleases the board on this. Why don't we suggest an October or November initial report back when we have the startup enrollment and the first year's academic results, and use that as a starting point?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I ask a question too? Can we really be specific to the charter school that those conditions that are laid out, we want to see that significant progress to the point that they're totally eliminated? I mean, just continually going back over this is not what very good use of this board's time, really.
Right. So, the charter school officials are here. I hope they've heard this discussion and seen this vote. There's a great deal of concern, and no one here should be interpreting my recommendation to the board as a thumbs up on the school. Right? I am not nominating this school for School of the Year. And I don't know how I can be plainer about this. There's a long way to travel. There's conditions that are on their way but not quite there, and so we will expect continuous progress against that, and we will report back to the board on that.
Okay. Yes, Ruth.
Yeah, just one final point, too. I'm just, I guess this is the charter school office, but it's to all of us. I'm very concerned about the message that we're sending out to the charter school community, or the hidden message maybe that we're sending about the importance of doing special education and ELL work right. And, I feel like, we say that it's important. We just had the legislature enact a law that insisted upon the importance of charter schools addressing the needs of these two populations, yet, here we are allowing the school to go forward where they have not stepped up to the plate in that regard. So going forward, I just think that when we look at the next round of charter schools again, we have to ensure that these are not marginal issues, that, it's okay to get them right in a year or two, because it's not okay. These kids are losing a year of school. And with regard to getting back again to that compensatory scheme for special ed, I mean, I don't know these kids, I don't know what was in their IEPs, but they could have lost a year of schooling because they didn't have appropriate accommodation. So it's quite a serious matter, and we need to be sending the message that it's something that's the top of our agenda, not an afterthought.
Thank you, Ruth. Okay. I think it's time to move on to our last item for discussion and vote today, which is the report on the conditions and recommendation for the new leadership charter school.